Welcome to the Scoop World Order special Sunday edition. It's been a couple of days. There's been a lot of movement, a lot of crazy stuff. Some big visitors on campus from the portal. A huge update on the Army All-American game, formerly Army All-American game, now just the All-American game. Some guys really showed out. Some guys did fantastic stuff. Our early enrollees are here now as of this Sunday. So they are officially about to get broke off by Mick Marotti in the weight room, which I love because recruiting is now over and now they own you. So welcome to Ohio State. We got that. We got a lot more to talk about. We're going to knock this thing out, get you done by 1 so you guys can go watch your Sunday NFL games. But we appreciate you guys tuning in. If you could hit that like button, appreciate it. Comment. Need to know who needs to step up in spring ball. Who can make a big impact in spring ball? We got Carnell Tate is going to be in. Brandon Innes, unfortunately, cannot graduate early, but he's a guy that I would love to see play slot between Marvin and Emeka. We'll talk a little about the USC rumors with them tampering with our players. A lot of crazy stuff going on. Really excited about winter conditioning starting up in about a week. And on the 16th, it is the final day for people to declare for the draft. And I think that Ohio State fans are going to be very, very excited because I believe there's going to be one last dance by a lot of these guys that are kind of on the fringe of going pro. I think they are going to come back highly motivated and ready to rock for next year. So I'm excited about that. With that being said, I am going to get my good friend out of the green room, and I'm going to bring in my good friend Nevada Buck real quick. But as always, we're thankful for and we're grateful for you guys. Thank you guys for spending your Sunday with us. Again, please give us a like and a follow and subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, any of the many formats that we distribute this to, we appreciate you guys. Leave us a 5-star review. All of that adds up, and you guys are the best. So we appreciate you guys and all you guys do to be a part of the Scoop family. So thank you so much. That being said, got my man Nevada Buck. Nevada, how are you this Sunday?
I'm doing great. That was a fun All-American Bowl yesterday, but not as much fun as they used to be. I don't, like it used to be that they'd have those games, and I can still remember the recruitment and the famous Terrell Pryor pointing at the Buckeye emblems on the helmet, and there was always some drama, and a lot of the drama was gone, but the game was semi-entertaining anyway, and so that was a fun weekend of kind of a continuation of the next chapter of college football.
Yeah, it's always funny when we kind of play the remember one game with recruiting. In your opinion, is anything as fun as it used to be in recruiting? Because I feel like you're completely right in terms of the Army All-American Bowl used to be like a stop everything, let's watch it. It was more condensed probably 15 years ago when there wasn't an Under Armour game, because the Under Armour game came in and kind of took half the talent because there's a lot of really, really good players that play in that game. But back in the day, when I was coming out, when I was in my early stage of coaching, that Army game was literally it was like the 70 best players in the country, a lot of commitments, a lot of kids. The early signing day is kind of taking the wind out of the sails of that because a lot of kids would decide at that game, they do 10, 20 commits at the game. Is there anything in recruiting that is better now? Because I feel like back in the day, like signing day used to be like a national holiday, a lot of excitement. There wasn't as much. I think there was more drama before there was, the edit monkey that would come out and make the edits and kind of pass along, hey, by the way, Mateo's going to Oregon. Hey, by the way, and all the crystal balls change like the night before the kid announces. Is anything as fun now as it used to be?
Well, I think it's just different. It's just different. Like you said, the big thing is the 2 signing days. The Army game used to be in January before that February signing day, and that set up a lot of drama and intrigue, and just it was just different. And now you've got that early signing day, and so you've kind of diluted things a little bit, and I think it's just a reflection of where college football's at in 2023, and it takes some adjustment, but yeah, no, I do long for some of the days of the reports from the Army All-American game and the announcements and the trifecta and all the other great stuff that used to roll out of there. Those were good times, but now, like you said, we just we move on, and now we deal with transfer portal and early entrance and early entrance to the NFL, and it's just a new set of drama. So it's kind of changed. I'm sure we'll look back on this 20 years from now and talk longingly about how great these days were.
You broke Jarrett Kingston, the tackle, guard, from Washington State, was coming into town. He actually broke he was actually coming in from Mexico, which was amazing. Any update on that? Did the visit go okay? Any news on where Ohio State stands with that? I think that people are really excited to see if we can land a transfer portal tackle. I think that I have less anxiety than most people do because I think that if you play Donnie Jackson and Josh Fryer at the tackles, that will be fine. I mean, it might not be the level of Paris and Dewan, but Paris and Dewan's the best pair of tackles we've had since Pace and String, in my opinion. And I played tackle there, so I know what good tackles look like. So obviously, I don't think it'll be at that level, and I don't think there's any guy in the portal that we could get that would take it to that level, or any true freshman, even who would have gotten Caden Proctor. I don't think we'd be at that level for this upcoming year. But your thoughts on Jarrett Kingston and did Justin Fry do enough to potentially earn his commitment?
Well, I think just had posted an update on this. Ohio State feels like the visit went fine, which is generally not a great indicator. Usually like to think that the visit went fantastic, amazing. He put on the Brutus head. He was wearing a Woody hat when he left, and he cried when he walked into the Woody hat. And it wasn't like that. It was like the visit went fine. But I think they kind of have him in the, if he would commit to Ohio State, it would be a surprise category. Now, we've been surprised before. The only good news is I think they'd all agreed that it was best for all involved if a decision is made here very quickly. So we're going to know on this one relatively quickly. As I hate the percentage game, but because I always think these percentages are probably 100 or 0. But what I would say is Ohio State would be surprised if they landed him. And so I guess that's where I would be as well.
Yeah, I mean with the portal kids, I think that the longer a kid is in the portal, regardless of his talent, I think I'm always not sure if he knows what he's doing. A lot of these kids, they get in the portal and they commit like a day later because there's obviously tampering involved. There's always, kind of, it's not even backroom shenanigans, but it's real easy to circumvent tampering when you just go to a high school coach or you go through. The biggest thing is these kids all have agents now, so it's the same as coaching. Like all of a sudden when Luke Fickell goes from being the head coach of Cincinnati and then he's the head coach of Wisconsin like 2 days later, and there's no smoke, there's no rumors. It's funny. Anytime there's like big rumors of a coach going somewhere, usually it doesn't mean anything. It's like the ones where everything's like kind of silent. Like Lincoln Riley in the dead of the night after losing Bedlam to Oklahoma State goes to USC. Those are the ones that I think are best for all parties involved because when there's that. There's that Godzilla standing out of the Woody Hayes like in 2011 when we knew Urban Meyer was coming, and we're a staff and we're like Godzilla standing outside the building, get ready to light it on fire. It's just not good for anybody. It's not good for the team. It's not good for the coaches because a lot of those assistants, pretty much all those assistants except for Mike Vrabel, Luke Fickell, and Stan Drayton got whacked, and they were looking for jobs over the Christmas holiday. I mean, that's like the hard part about the coaching profession is a lot of these guys get fired in November, so Christmas is never really that fun when you're uprooting your family and, you might be going from a job at Ohio State making, substantial money, $500, $800, $1 million a year to, like John Peterson went to UAB, where you're probably making a half of what you made. So, but again, it doesn't matter because that's the life that they chose. But yeah, I think that these kids, when they don't go somewhere and they're just kind of surfing and they take 3 and 4 visits, like I'm always curious because, like those visits, they take 2-3 days. You're not working out. You got to get into the winter conditioning because a lot of these teams are going to start winter conditioning this week, get back to working out. They give them, a week off or a couple weeks off after the game. But, these young guys, especially like the young guys that didn't play for Ohio State, they got to start getting it in like this week. They got to start working towards 6 a.m. workouts, which 6 a.m.s usually start in February. Those are terrible, miserable experiences. And I think that, these early enrollees, there's a lot of these guys, Luke Montgomery, Tate, these guys are coming in literally right from the All-American game to the Woody Hayes today. And then they're going to start working out tomorrow, starting class tomorrow. It's already here. Like that's the funny thing is people think that there's an off season, but in college football, there's no off season any longer. Nevada, in your history, do you think that when these kids enroll early, it really helps their progression, or is it kind of a waste? I kind of think it's position dependent usually, and it's also depth chart dependent. But your thoughts on some of these guys enrolling early, and could they really help?
Well, I think absolutely it does. And, I think back on, the first time that I really became kind of aware of the early entrant thing with Ohio State was Maurice Clarett. When he came in,
Oh,
I'm not saying he was the first to do it, but he was the first high profile kid, to kind of do it. And I didn't really, at the time it was like, what is he doing? He's enrolling early, and he's coming in, and obviously we all know how that story ended there with that glorious national championship season. So yeah, no, I think these kids get such an advantage in terms of just acclimating to the system, and being away to college, and like you said, learning the rigors of Coach Mick, and getting the ability to go through spring ball is just an enormous advantage over a kid like a Burt Carton who just kind of showed up a few days before for camp with a gym bag and a 6-pack of Red Bull, and just asking
right.
where the dorms were. You know what I'm saying? So I think these kids have a huge edge in terms of doing that. So I love when I see it. I I understand why kids now they're kind of taking it the next step where kids are actually reclassifying and going a year early, to kind of start the clock, even before that. And, again, I get it. These are business decisions to try to get to the NFL as quickly as possible. But, I wonder how much these kids miss by, missing like their senior year in high school because, look, as great as the money is and as great as everything else is, if you're good, the money's still going to be there. And, for anybody who's played sports in high school, whatever level, good, bad, low level, whatever, senior year in high school is a great year. That's one of the best years of your life. And you hate to see kids like that, you know, I wouldn't say throw it away, but kind of walk away from it because you don't ever get it back, And so, like I said, I have mixed emotions about doing it, but from a strictly Ohio State benefit standpoint, yeah, huge benefit. Glad to see him do it, and it can only help the Buckeyes in 2023. Which, hey, I know the season's not over yet in 2022. One more game, which I will not be watching, but Ohio State is absolutely in the mix for the national championship in 2023. They're going to be right there. They're going to be one of the teams, despite Kirby Smart and the Peach Bowl allegedly filming their practice before the Peach Bowl. They're still going to be there in 2023, and lots to be optimistic about and lots to be excited about.
All right, so we're going to get into that because we kind of buried the lead. There's a significant chance Ohio State is going to file a complaint over a camera that was found during a security sweep. So Ohio State give Ryan Day a ton of credit for not trusting the Peach Bowl officials and the people in the Mercedes-Benz domes and sweeping the areas, the suites. They found a camera. It's pointed at the film. Of course, their alibi was that, this is for a promo reel for the scoreboard videos. But I mean, the camera is like pointed right at the practice field. It is like at an angle that, if you're a coach and you needed like the perfect angle to, identify signals, identify, potential offensive looks, defensive looks, So, I mean, is that the reason we lost? No, probably not. But again, it's also, the level of cheating and sophistication. There's a huge article that I posted on BuckeyesScoop.com about the sophistication of sign stealing. Everybody does it. Lip readers. I mean, it's insane the levels that some of these schools go to catch an edge. I mean, there's a reason why Ohio State, they hold up boards and they have 5 different guys wearing different shirts signaling, and they wore wristbands in the game because they knew that Georgia is very sophisticated at stealing your signals. So they literally went to wristbands because with a wristband you can change the numbers, and at halftime they switched all the wristbands out again so that they couldn't get a beat on what our plays were. Again, this sounds paranoid and crazy, but this has been going on for a long time, and with technology, it's never been easier to steal signs. But Nevada, we had this like 2 weeks ago. We put it on the board, we podcasted on it, and then it's just now finally getting to some of the other people saying, oh yeah, there really was a camera. Because a lot of people denied it because they just weren't really wired in the way we were. But we had a really good source tell us, oh yeah, there's a camera. Ohio State is hot about it. They're not happy that there's a camera pointed. They don't buy the explanation. They don't trust these people. but they didn't make a stink about it. They didn't bring it up at a press conference. They didn't, because again, they're not trying to sound like sore losers. Like, 'cause again, you don't really win by saying, hey, oh, there was a camera there. And you sound like you're just making excuses. No one hears it. So credit to those guys for not doing that. But, you know, what's going on, Nevada? I mean, we had this thing nailed, of course, like usual. And do you think that had an impact? Do you think that that's something that, again, like, when you're Georgia, you're the Peach Bowl, you're hosting a game, and the hometown team, the Georgia Bulldogs, is playing there. They're rooting for Georgia. They want Georgia football to be a powerhouse. They want Georgia football to win. They host Georgia in the Kickoff Classic and in the SEC Championship almost every year now. Was there anything to this, Nevada?
Well, look, when the story first broke, I really didn't think there was anything to it. And we were talking about it at the time, and I was kind of going, yeah, I don't think there's a really lot to it. And then we started digging a little bit more. And as you said, we came out with a podcast going, no, there's something to this. This absolutely happened. So I was skeptical hippo when this thing broke and did not think there was anything to it. But then once we got the information that we did, we knew there was something to it. We knew that why Ohio State wasn't making a big deal about it, why Ohio State wasn't going to, they didn't want anything to be, like you said, whether it be a distraction or be viewed as complainers or whatever it was. They were going to let all the dust settle. But I'm telling you now, listen carefully, people. Ohio State is not letting this go. And so there is going to be something that's going to happen. Now, is it a formal complaint against Georgia? Is it a formal complaint against the Peach Bowl? Is it a formal complaint against the organizing committee for the playoff? I don't know where that's going, but it's not going away. So we'll see where it happens. Do I think this will be some earth-shaking thing? Well, look, based upon recent history and the way these things generally handle, I wouldn't expect great things to come from it. But Ohio State's making a deal out of this because they were not happy about how it went down, about the explanations they received. They have not accepted the explanations they received because they had this would just go away. This would be a non-story. But let me tell you what, this is a story, and it happened, and we did have it. And like I said, from an Ohio State fan's perspective, it should upset you. It should be like, wait a second, why are these guys doing stuff like this? Why is this allowed to happen? And it'll be interesting to have Ohio State dig into this and see if they can kind of get some people to come correct.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you do. I think you see if there's a way you could practice at the Falcons facility, or I mean, when you're in a giant arena like that, there's a lot of prying eyes. There's a lot of luxury suites. There's a lot of little crevices where you can put a camera. I remember like we practiced in the Superdome one time when we were in Louisiana, our last practice. Bob Stoops talked to Trussell about it, and he said, they practiced there when they're getting ready to play LSU in the national championship game in 2003. It was my freshman year, the year that Saban won. He won it at LSU, and he regretted it because he saw how many people were watching practice. There were a lot of people watching practice that day. And, when you're playing in Louisiana, or when you're playing in like, you're playing on the road, basically. Like we were playing in Louisiana. Oklahoma was playing in Louisiana for the national title against LSU. Like if you're playing a true neutral site and you're playing, the Florida Gators or Miami Hurricanes or something in Louisiana, that's a lot different than playing, the Bayou Bengals in Louisiana. And, we practiced at the Saints facility. We practiced at Tulane a couple of days, and we went to the Saints facility. I hated practicing at Tulane because the entire stadium, the entire field was surrounded by tall apartment buildings. So again, you don't have to be like some sort of like, tinfoil hat guy to be like, oh man, I wonder if somebody could see our practice, film our practice, and get it to LSU. And again, did that happen? No, or maybe it did. I don't really care. But you don't like to shoot yourself in the foot by like having something out in the open. There's a reason why coaches are secretive. There's a reason why, Ohio State at their practices now, they kick NFL scouts out after like a half hour, which that is a level of paranoia that I've never seen before. Because when I was with Trussell and even Urban, like the scouts could stay for the whole practice if they wanted to. Most of them would leave after like an hour and a half. They leave like kind of, in the middle of it. But now these guys get booted after 30 minutes. Like they get to watch stretch and get to watch some of the initial stuff. But then after that, they are booted. And again, like, why is there enhanced paranoia because these guys all talk. These guys all have friends in the profession. Not everybody loves Ohio State. So I mean, some of these guys, like, they'll go watch Ohio State, then they'll drive up, to Ann Arbor and watch Michigan and say, hey, well, this is some of the stuff I saw them doing, or whatever. I mean, usually for Michigan, we close practice for everybody, but I don't know. It's just the craziness. Like, it sounds wild and crazy, but I've lived it. I've been in the coaching room. I know how crazy some of the stuff is that people do and that coaches do. And it's not, none of it's crazy. I'm telling you, if you think it can happen, it's happened. I promise you. Nevada, as we get into winter conditioning.
Well, hold on. Let me say one more thing on that. I remember the days, Coach, when Cooper was here, Cooper would invite me to come to practices, and I would bring sandwiches and go to practice and sit there and watch the whole practice. And he would come over and sit next to me and ask me what I was eating and share chips and watch the game. And to see how it's kind of changed in the years, it's so funny. It's like, I think people get super paranoid about something. I just laugh all the. I bring my kids. My kids be running around chasing the football out in the field, and be sitting up there eating a Subway sandwich, talking to Coach Cooper during the practice. And but now it's like, super lockdown city and spy versus spy. So boy, things have changed.
Well, I mean, Tim May used to tell me he used to go to practice every single day and watch practice every day, and I was like, you're kidding me. No, every day would go sit in the bleachers, watch practice. Then, like, in the off season, he'd go sit in coaching meetings and clinic with some of the old timers. With God, who's the one? Oh God, I'm dying. He was the one really old defensive coordinator. This is gonna drive me nuts. Bill Young. He used to like sit in clinic with him. Like, I mean, like again, like you're barely like, if you're a media member, you're essentially treated like vermin. I mean, they get you in and out just because they have to, but the quicker they can get you out, they're getting you out. And they'll give you a press conference a week, and they'll give you, you get to watch a stretch period for 30 minutes of practice, and you might get to watch one full practice during camp. But like, compared to what it used to be when it was like basically all access all the time, like, Tim said he used to walk through the locker room, players, in there, whatever. Like, I mean, I was just like, that's insane to think now, and now it's like, I don't know. Something that was kind of interesting, and I don't know if this is just because it was a semifinal game. I didn't notice the locker room interviews that they normally do in championship settings, because that was like one of the great things about, when we lost to Florida and LSU, literally like 10 minutes after the game, the whole entire media contingent is allowed into the locker room. And I mean, I'm talking about like dudes are like showering, dudes are like getting cleaned up, guys are crying. And here comes this swarm of these locusts like coming in and just putting cameras in your face, and Teddy and Troy and those guys. And I was just like, holy cow. But I didn't notice that after this game. Maybe it's because it's only a playoff semifinal, not the championship game. But that was stunning to me. I remember we lost to Florida. Then like 10 minutes later, there's 100 media people in our locker room with cameras, and it was just weird because it was straight NFL. Like, because in the NFL, they do that. In the NFL, there's 2 days a week when you're sitting in the practice facility, and there's cameras and there's people. I mean, it's really like the weirdest thing in the world. But I don't know. Like the media thing is different now. As we get into,
I gotta tell you one more story. This is just a great story. I don't know if I told you guys the story before. Maybe I have. I mean, the old guy that repeats himself. But UCLA, I want to say it was 79. Ohio State's playing at UCLA, and the game's at the Coliseum. And before the game, my dad, Papa Nevada Buck, the original Nevada Buck, is saying to me, he goes, yeah, I know the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. He used to grow up on my street. I taught him how to play football. I used to throw the football with him when he was a kid. And I'm like, really? Like, you really know the defensive coordinator for Ohio State? He goes, yeah, I swear, I know him. So I'm like, okay, well, if you know him, then go say hello to him. So we got to the game really early at the Coliseum, and my dad like walks around all the way around the thing, and I see him kind of go down the thing, and I see him like waving at somebody, yelling, and all of a sudden my dad's on the field warming up with Art Schleicher before the game, catching passes from him with the defensive coordinator. It was a guy named Denny Frizzell. And that was my dad's friend for the thing. But I swear, I remember my dad telling me that. And I'm thinking, you're lying. You don't know Denny Frizzell. You don't know the defensive coordinator for Ohio State. And sure enough, he did. He's down there on the field. So just a funny little story about how things have changed. That probably wouldn't happen in the year 2023, but in
Oh,
'79, yeah, that absolutely happened.
yeah, you just open the gate, walk out on the field before the start of the Rose
Exactly.
Bowl. Now it's like there'd be
Well, it
snipers,
was
there'd be terrorism units, and oh
well,
my
it
god.
wasn't the Rose Bowl. It was a regular season game. It was a regular season
Uh
game when they played UCLA when they won on the last second drive by Schleicher. But yeah, no, it was yeah, things have changed. You would not be able to walk it on the field.
well, I something I just thought of that I'd love to get your opinion on that is a seismic change that was implemented by the NCAA is they are getting ready to pass a rule that will permit people that are outside of the normally there's 10 coaches and there's 4 graduate assistants that are allowed to coach legally on the field. And anybody outside of that is not allowed to coach and instruct on the field in terms of teaching. That is actually about to get lifted. They're about to make it so that you can have infinite coaches on the field. Like you could have your Mark Pantoni could go out and coach the wide receivers, like really coach the wide receivers, not just stand on the sideline with his arms crossed. Like, because before it was completely illegal. Like in 2010, I was actually a quality control coach, and by letter of the law, I was not allowed to coach. I was not allowed to coach the offensive line. I could instruct on scout team, I could hold cards, but I couldn't be doing like, actual teaching and coaching. Now in 2011, I transitioned to being a graduate assistant. So when you're a graduate assistant, you're allowed to coach, just like the same as Ed Warner or Luke Fick or anybody else. But and this is a rule that Ohio State actually, or at least they used to follow, like really, because again, this is coming off the Tressel thing. Our absolutely idiotic compliance department, was all over us about that, and they were watching our practice film and watching from across the street of the faucet to see if we were out there coaching. So I had to like stand there during practice, which I hated. But most schools, especially smaller schools that don't have compliance departments, they get away with this. Like they'll have the director of high school relations be like the acting tight ends coach, even though it never says that on their title. Like we have Todd Finch, he's a quality control coach, probably makes 6 figures. I'm sure he's making over 6 figures. He's a guy that's coached at Vanderbilt. He's a longtime coach. He assists big time with the quarterbacks, with Corey Dennis, Ryan Day. I think him and Corey are almost kind of equal in terms of their quarterback coaching, but now he'll actually officially be able to coach. And the thing that's interesting, the thing I love your opinion on with this, Nevada, is that, how could you see this morphing so that the sophisticated outfits, the Alabamas, the Georgias, use this to their advantage in recruiting? Because the big thing that changes is, in general, the top 10 coaches, like the real 10 coaches, are guys that are allowed to go on the road and recruit. Like a graduate assistant can't go on the road and recruit. A QC can't go on the road and recruit. An intern or any of these other ancillary guys. Mark Pantoni can't go on the road and recruit. But, could you see Ohio State, quote unquote, demoting the lesser recruiters? I mean, because in theory, if Jim Knowles isn't a great recruiter, or Larry Johnson isn't a great recruiter, or Parker Fleming isn't a great recruiter, you could demote a guy and hire like a dynamic young kid who's a great recruiter and send him out on the road as kind of like an emissary. Now, again, are you going to have the cachet of being Larry Johnson going to your school? No, because you're just, a young coach. Or Jim Knowles, the D coordinator, going to your school? No. But for like Parker Fleming, who's a special teams coordinator and really could be a quality control coach instead of one of the top 9, you could demote him and hire a young minority coach and send him to Atlanta, send him to Texas, send him to Miami. Hire a guy like Malcolm Jenkins or somebody, who might want to get into coaching, Mike Doss. I mean, some of these guys are really, they're debating on doing it, and all of a sudden you have this spot, and for what they lack in technical ability and technical knowledge of being a proper coach, they could kill it in recruiting. So. And again, that's not a slight on Malk or Doss or any of those guys, but anyone that gets into coaching, there's a lot of stuff you have to learn. I did it for 3 years, and I couldn't believe how much stuff I didn't know about when I was getting into coaching. So it's not a slight on anybody, but when you're a young coach, you don't know what you don't know. But the thing you can do is you can recruit like a werewolf, and they can send you down into some of these schools. And if you're a big time NFL guy or a guy that has some cachet, like a James Laurinaitis, you could go into these high schools and kind of wow these kids because they remember you. They saw how good you were in college. But I'd love your thoughts on that, because I've kind of been waxing poetic on that for a minute. But I think this is one of the biggest changes outside of NIL that I can remember in college football, where you literally could have 50 guys coaching on the field during a practice. Like, I mean, it could get that crazy. You see Alabama, how they have these armies of guys. But I'd love your thought on that.
Well, I think it's a seismic change. And, I think there's two paths that this could go. I mean, I'm sure there's probably 52, but there's two that I see right off the bat that will be profound changes for college football recruiting, and potentially for Ohio State in particular. But one is, as you said, the idea of kind of, identifying kind of these regional recruiters, where you could locate a recruiter down in Houston or down in Miami, or put one down in Louisiana, or put one in Atlanta, or do whatever, because, like you said, you're not having to, share this responsibility between coaching and recruiting. That line becomes more blurred, and guys could just be specialists, just be focused on the job that they're specialized on, because you can spread out the coaching responsibilities to so many other people. And then the second thing, and the kind of the subcategory of this, is I look at it like when you're picking a school, like a private school, like a prep school for your kid. They talk a lot about teacher to student ratio. Is it 30 to 1? Is it 15 to 1? Is it 8 to 1? Is it 4 to 1? I mean, you're not telling me that Bama's not going to be going, hey, look, you'll be 1 to 1. You'll have your own private coach or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could come to that. And that, as crazy as that sounds, that could happen, because college football is big business. And what could be more, attractive to a guy who's trying to, be developed and try to get to the next level than some sort of, almost individual coaching and attention for your kid? How much of a selling point would that be to a parent, to a kid, to somebody who's got a dream of making riches at the next one, to have a guy that's focused on you or one or two other people or whatever it is, as opposed to some school where you're one of 30. Yeah, I mean, makes a big difference. Makes a big difference.
I'm telling you, I can already see where it's going to go. It'd be like if, say for instance, like I was, I did what I used to do as graduate assistant, when I would work out guys, whenever they needed to come in, whenever they needed to get extra work, whenever they need extra film room, I just kind of made it happen. And, when I did that, I was doing it at my detriment, because I'd have to leave the offensive staff meeting with Tom Herman and Ed Warner and say, hey, this kid's here, I got to go do some work with him, whatever. But I'd literally have to leave a meeting with Urban Meyer and those guys, because I'd have to go develop some guys. There were some guys that needed some extra work, some guys that wanted to get some film in, get some study stuff in, some footwork stuff in, whatever. I would go do that. Now, with the way that this is shaped, I wouldn't have to leave that meeting, because there would be another me. There'd be, Kirk number 2 that could go out and work those kids. And then you still have your full, it's almost like you're going to have like a coaching staff, and then you're going to have like a minor league staff that, because again, it's not minor league, but when you're a young kid and you're a development guy, you're a freshman, you need nurtured, you need helped, you need a lot more attention than a guy who's like a senior or a Paris Johnson Jr. who's already kind of on autopilot, who's already knows how to do everything, knows how to run the film, knows how to work out. He's already like a pro's pro. With these freshmen, what I would do if I was Ryan Day is I would hire, a young, offensive line GA, or an offensive line coach, who's not at the level of Justin Fry. He's not making $1 million a year, but he's like, you pay him $150 a year and say, look, you're in charge of the practice squad, the developmental kids, the guys that haven't started a game, the guys that are second, the Trey LaRue, Zen Mikulski's, like the guys that aren't playing. You have to go get work in with those guys to get them up to snuff, and I think that the value in that would be tremendous, because, these kids, on Friday, you could get a workout in with them. On Saturday, you can get a workout in with them before the game. If they're guys that aren't going to play, get a workout in with them. On Sunday, Monday, you could get a workout with them. So it's like you could double and triple the amount of development time they have just by having extra people. Because the problem is right now, the way the staff's structured is you just don't have enough guys. And plus, you had that limit where you can only have so many, coaches and, there's a 20-hour rule and all that. But, for some of these kids, on Saturdays, for instance, if there's an away game and they take 75 guys or 80 guys, I don't know if the travel squad's at 70 or 80 now. What do the guys on Saturday do? What do the O-linemen on Saturday do? Because they're still on the clock. They're still, they have like an infinite day on Saturday because there's no 20-hour rule on a game day Saturday. So what do those guys do? And I'd be like, well, you guys are going to be at the Woody Hayes with me. We're going to get a lift in. We're going to do some walkthroughs. We're going to do some technique work. We're going to get a good 3 hours in of work, film, study, playbook development. Again, that's how good teams can become great teams and develop some of these young guys. Because a lot of these young guys, when they don't make the travel squad, a lot of these guys fall off the cliff because they get depressed, they go home, they start using drugs. Some of these kids, we would put them on the travel squad just so they wouldn't go home. Because some of these kids would go home to Cleveland and they go hang out with the homies and they go smoke weed, they fail a drug test. It'd be like this death spiral. And so you'd have to take guys just so they wouldn't go home. But now if you had, say you had one for every position, say you had maybe a couple on, you had a skill development guy who could do the tight ends, receivers, running backs. You have a quarterback guy, you have an O-line guy, D-line guy, secondary guy, linebacker guy. I mean, you can hire 6 guys, pay them each $100,000 and have them like develop your practice squad, develop the young guys. Because again, if there's one thing that is hard to do, especially in season, it's develop the freshmen and the young guys. Because those guys, they go off and they play scout team. They don't really get coached. And again, this is coming from me. I literally played scout team. The scout team's getting ran by the defensive GA who doesn't know anything about offensive line work or protection or technique. And so it's almost, if the kids don't take it seriously and there's not like an iron hand over them, then it's kind of a lost year. But now you could say, okay, I'm going to have Kirk Barton, who's the associate junior jet offensive line coach, come over there and help run the scout team and run the O-line and coach them and be kind of on them, be really hard on them. And then go watch the film with the junior jet O-line team and then go work them out on set. Because again, that is what the really high level programs will do. The sophisticated, the guys that don't have a budget and can literally hire 20 QCs like Bama does, that's what they're going to do. And I'm telling you, that is the most ingenious thing you can do because, where do you lose a lot of these kids? Their freshman year. When they don't play, they don't travel, they're kind of just lost in the world. It happened with Quinn Ewers. Like Quinn Ewers, he came up here, we didn't have time to develop him. We're trying to develop CJ Stroud. We're trying to go win a game on Saturday. So, if you said, okay, we've got personal QB guru working with Quinn every day, working on the playbook with Quinn every day, or working on, with Quinn and Kyle or Jack or, the 2 guys that aren't going to play, if you're starting CJ and McCord's the backup, the guys that don't play get to go with QB guru guy on Friday, Saturday, when these guys have downtime and develop them and go do drills with them and throw it into the nets and work footwork. And, like I think this could be a seismic thing. It's a huge opportunity and it'll be interesting to see how teams abuse the rule because that's the thing about with like NIL is people are like, oh, this will be great because, you can go to a car dealership and get a car. It's like, no, it turned into inducements for seniors in high school. Those are the guys that started making money. So, there's always a law and there's an intended, outcome. And then there's the unintended consequences that come with the really smart and sophisticated programs like Georgia and Alabama that figure out how to muddy up the waters and make their program better. And that was a long one, but do you have any response to that? Because I think that this could be something that would be dramatically beneficial, and there will be a bigger thing in the universe that'll separate the haves from have-nots than this.
Well, I think the open question is going to be how aggressively will Ohio State attack this? We saw it with NIL where we hated to be the Chicken Littles, but it's kind of going, hey guys, wait a second, I know. This thing's coming down the track, and you might want to watch out for this. And finally, like a year later, Ohio State's kind of going, oh, man, maybe you guys were right. Well, I'm telling you on this one, you better get ahead of this one because the teams like Alabama that abuse medical redshirting or oversigning or gray shirting or signing, analysts or, whatever the myriad of rules that they've kind of taken to the nth degree. Well, Ohio State's got to look at this and embrace this from day one because you don't want to fall farther behind. You've already got an issue for Ohio State, which is kind of a significant one, is that Ohio State high school football is not as good as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that's a problem. Is it the end of the program? No. Is it the end of days? No. Are we in the death spiral? No. But it's a something. So this is one where, look, guys, get ahead of this, Ohio State. I know you listen to these podcasts. Get ahead of this. Be aggressive in this. Don't be cheap in this. And be a leader instead of a follower. And I think this could turn into something of great benefit for a school like the Buckeyes, but they got to get ahead of it.
Yeah, I think that, people don't realize how much Ohio high school football has dropped over the last 10, 15 years. We were talking about this on BuckeyeScoop.com. Again, if you guys do not belong to BuckeyeScoop.com, like if you enjoy this content, it's literally like this about 24 hours a day. Because, I mean, BuckeyeScoop.com does not sleep. I get up early. We're on that thing. We're talking ball. We're talking about next level stuff. It's really fun to talk about. But, I mean, Ohio... The state of Ohio is kind of like on the level of maybe the state of Alabama. Alabama might have a little bit higher level talent, but in terms of the volume of big time players, they're about equal now. And Ohio used to blow past. No one ever thought, the state of Alabama was like a football powerhouse. The way you talk about, 15 years ago, it was always Florida, Texas, California. Now Georgia has just shot up like an absolute, just like a missile. I mean, they've gone to the stratosphere of how good their football is. I mean, you watch the NFL today. Last night, you see Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. Those are Georgia kids. Their lines are really good. Their skill guys are super developed. Georgia is like a mishmash of, if you took Ohio's high school coaching, which is fantastic, and Florida's talent and put them in a blender, you get Georgia. You get really well coached guys that are super, super athletic, super well conditioned. They're not as raw. A lot of Florida kids generally are pretty raw when they get into college, just because the coaching's not as good. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how teams move on this. Because I'm telling you, man, if I'm like Nick Saban and I'm Kirby Smart, I'm some of these guys, I'm licking my chops when they pass this thing. And Ohio State has gotten a lot better at it. Let's just be honest. I mean, they had Paul Rhodes, former Iowa State head coach, as an analyst last year. They had Todd Fitch has been here for multiple years as a quarterback guy. He doesn't seem to look to be going anywhere. I mean, he's kind of satisfied in his role, which is good for the development of our quarterbacks. I think that, we've got a lot of hands on, kind of, on the pot when you've got Corey and you've got obviously Ryan Day's he's the real the lead quarterback coach, because it's kind of his position. But you got a lot of guys in that room, but I think you add, like, especially at the big time development positions like offensive line, defensive line, where guys have to get bigger, stronger, faster. They have to get better technically to be proficient in college football. I think, man, you hire like a junior jet O-line coach and have him work with those young guys like a Tasmanian devil. And I think that's where you can reap rewards, because then you're not worried about, well, Zen Mikowski hasn't played, or George Fitzpatrick hasn't played, or Tigra hasn't played, or, because I'd be like, no, these guys are getting ground into mincemeat by the second tier O-line coach. Again, and I know we have, Mike Soline, who's an offensive GA, he's literally in the seat that I used to sit in, but that guy's got to do game planning. He's got to do film breakdowns. He's got to do kind of all that stuff. So he can't really do the role I'm describing. Like, you would literally need a guy who's like the O-line guru consultant, who doesn't travel with the team for road games. He stays back, works out the O-line, has a practice for him. Again, like, because you could look at all kinds of things. You could do scrimmages. I mean, you could do one-on-ones. And again, some of this might not be legal, but again, you can work one-on-one with these O-line guys and really develop them in the offseason and in season. And that's like, there's a big gap on these weekends for these road games. Cause I used to remember when I was, when I didn't travel as a freshman, the year I redshirted, I mean, after you get a workout in at like 8 a.m. on Friday, and then you didn't go back to the Woody for 2 days. Like, you didn't go back to the Woody until noon on Sunday. And, so you got like 2 days of nothingness. And most of us would just go home. Like, Tony Gonzalez would go back to Cleveland. I'd go back to Canton. Kurt Luke. I mean, because sitting in the dorms your freshman year is about the most depressing, terrible thing in the world. So most of us go home, see our families, because, you're sitting in a little dinky dorm. It just sucks. But, and plus a lot of these guys, man, when they don't travel, they just don't feel like they're part of the team. They feel like complete scrubs. And A lot of these guys are heralded guys, 4 or 5-star guys, and they get left back, and it sucks. So now you got a guy that can work with them, develop a relationship with them. And then you can also, by adding these extra spots, I'm going to put some more Ennis film on because it's Sunday, and I love watching some Brandon Ennis on Sunday service. You also kind of develop your bullpen, So if Justin Fry leaves to be the head coach at Indiana, his alma mater, next year, your junior Jetto line coach, if you like what you see and you like what you hear, you can just raise him up to be Justin's replacement. Kind of like what they did with Keenan Bailey. Like now you can put Keenan as an on-field coach, and if Kevin Wilson isn't a dynamic recruiter, make Keenan the lead guy and have Keenan go out and do the recruiting for him. That's the thing that's going to be really interesting to see. Do you get some young dynamic guys who can go out on the field, and how fluid is it, or what kind of regulation is there on who is a top 10 coach? Like, do you have to name your 10 coaches at the beginning of the year? And do you have to remove them from, fire them to be able to bring one up? Or can you flip flop it and say, okay, well, Keenan Bailey is, he's the associate, whatever, to Ryan Day's, whatever, advisor, whatever his role was last year. This week, we're going to make Kevin Wilson the advisor, he's not a top 10 coach, and he can't recruit. So Keenan could literally go on the road and recruit during a game week. So that's the thing that's going to be a major change. And if you're in the South, you're Georgia, you're one of the Florida schools, you could have 5 coaches on the road during a game week recruiting, going into the high schools, seeing these kids, again, that's where it's going to get real interesting is do you take guys off of being top 10 coaches so that you can have 5 guys come on that are just dynamic recruiters? Do you just go get 5 guys that really know how to do it, and they know the game, they know the recruiting game, and then you leave the other guys at home? It'll be interesting to see how fluid that is. And, do you have to name your 10 of coaches, or can you just kind of, okay, today Nevada Buck is going to be the tight ends coach, and Kirk is going to be on the road recruiting. And then tomorrow I'm going to come back and be the tight ends coach, and you're going to go on the road recruiting. That would be fascinating. You live in California and say, well, Nevada knows Los Angeles better than I do. So, he's going to go recruit, Bosco and, all those schools while I'm tight end coaching today. But I know Florida better because I grew up in Naples, so I can go hit the West Coast and the East Coast of Florida, and then, Nevada can come back and be the tight end coach. That's what's going to be fascinating, is see how fluid it is and how they police that and contracts. It's just, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting because, again, I always love when these rules come out, because the NCAA, they pass these rules, and then all of a sudden you're just like, man, there's some real potential for this to get real hairy real quick. Any reaction to that, Nevada? Again, this is just me pontificating, but I can see this being, one of the seismic things. It's as big as NIL, but for these coaches that are really smart about having a bullpen of guys literally in-house ready to go when they know guys are getting ready to leave. I think that's one of the things where Nick Saban has just been ahead of the curve. Even Kirby Smart, he had Will Muschamp as an analyst, and then he takes down the former strength coach from Alabama, Scott Cochran, who had some off the field issues. He demotes him to being a quality control coach and special teams coordinator, and he promotes Muschamp to being the defensive coordinator. But Muschamp was already sitting in the building for a year. He already knew the players. He already knew the defensive playbook calls. So it was a pretty seamless transition as opposed to bringing in somebody from outside. But your thoughts on the 10 rule, and then we'll wrap this thing up because it is time to watch some NFL football.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to open the door for play. I mean, go get a Santonio Holmes and have him recruit the muck, or go get, Malcolm Jenkins, who's a legend down in Louisiana with the Saints, or somebody from Vegas. Go get Haskell and have him recruit Bishop Gorman. Or it's going to be a seed change, and it's going to be amazing to watch how this kind of breaks down and what the rule says, and as you said, what the spirit of the rule says, what the letter of the rule says, and how quickly Ohio State embraces this one. But dramatic change. I can see lots and lots and lots of benefits for guys that would ordinarily get buried on the depth chart and may not get the attention. But I see this is rife for abuse too, and Ohio State's got to be in a position to take advantage of it.
Yeah, again, when Brian Hartline started off as a quality control coach, I believe it was in 2016, maybe. And he did like a year or two. Then he took over in 18. Haskins' year. Imagine if Brian Hartline, even though you don't know if he's a good coach, if he's got the ability to coach, when you get like some of these guys, especially these NFL guys that retire and they want to try coaching, generally the biggest ad that they can bring to the room and to the staff is to be a great recruiter. Because again, Brian Hartline played in Miami, played for the Browns. Again, if you send him down there, his first year on the job, and he goes and he talks about, I love Ohio State, played at Ohio State, played in the league for 7-8 years, whatever it was. Life's been very, very good to me. All this, like, that is a much bigger benefit than him just being a quality control guy who kind of sits there and is kind of just an ancillary coach where, like again, and plus I think it'd be a great way for some of these guys to earn their stripes and actually provide real value from the jump. Like if you got, like I talked about, James Laurinaitis wanted to come in and work with Ohio State. He couldn't get anyone to return his phone call, so he ends up going to Notre Dame. If you could have hired James to be a QC and then potentially shifted him into being one of the 10 coaches and put him on the road to recruit, especially the way, we've whiffed on every single linebacker and you send him after Troy Bowles and Tackett Curtis and some of these guys and James is recruiting them, maybe things are different. I just think that, I think it's going to get to the point where you're going to have guys, and again, the thing that I don't know is, can you just switch who's one of the top 10 coaches? Like how hard is that to do? Is that like you just fill out a form and all of a sudden, Kirk Barton, offensive GA, is one of the top 10 and Ed Warner is a ancillary coach. Everything stays the same salary, same titles, but I get to go on the road and recruit while Ed is game planning to play Kent State or whoever. You don't need me there, or like you make that kind of that junior jet O-line guy. So okay, on Tuesday, Wednesday when we're having full practice and we've got Ed Warner and the GA coaching the O-line, junior jet O-line coach is going to go and hit Miami, or he's going to go see Samson Okunlowo in Jersey or whatever. Like, I mean, that's the thing that's going to be fascinating to see how or Massachusetts, where I think Samson's from Massachusetts. Like, but that's the thing where it's going to be really interesting to see how people deploy this. Because again, when you don't have countable coaches anymore and you can make 5 recruiters go on the road, I think that'll be unbelievable. Because again, there's going to be teams that are going to take advantage of that. And do you hire guys just based on their relationships they have in certain areas? You hire certain high school coaches to take that role. If you got someone who's at American Heritage or Chaminade Madonna or Peachtree Ridge or some of these superpower coaches, or say, you hire Drew Stanton, who's Dylan Raiola's personal quarterback coach, and you make him junior jet quarterback guy and you pay him $250,000 a year, and then magically you get a 5-star quarterback who already has his quote unquote swing coach coming with him. Like, yeah, that's where it's going to be really fun. And I can't wait to see. That's why I love the message board life right now. And I love BuckeyeScoop.com because, man, it is stuff like this is just absolutely crazy. And, anytime I think that the NCAA is calming everything down, they throw some Molotov cocktail in like this, where, if you're Ryan Day and you're Gene Smith, you got to figure out, okay, how can we take advantage of this, and how will our enemies, more importantly, use this to their advantage? And we have to kind of match serve with what they do to stay competitive. So it's going to be really fascinating. So with that being said, Nevada, any closing remarks other than go Pack go? Because I know your boys are winning in tonight. Any closing remarks for this podcast? Appreciate you guys joining this for Super Sunday. But any closing remarks, Nevada?
No, just appreciate everybody's support. We'll see everybody on BuckeyeScoop.com. The season never's over, even though that game tomorrow night, I'd like to hear from everybody in terms of how many people are going to be watching the game, because I will not be watching. I'll watch Real Housewives or the House of the Dragon for the 7th time or something, but I will not be watching that game. But yes, go Pack go, and we'll see you on the message board.
All right. Appreciate you, my man. I'm going to lock this thing down. As always, thank you guys for spending your Sunday with us. We appreciate you guys so much. This has been a blast. We love doing these live shows. We love having you guys on with us. We have just so much fun. Love the interaction. Love the questions. Love the comments. Sue's not watching. That doesn't surprise me. Sue's too hardcore to watch the Georgia Bulldogs whip TCU, which is going to happen. But comment down below which young player do you think needs to step up and be ready to rock for spring ball? Is it Zen Mikulski at left tackle? Obviously, Kyle McCord at quarterback, Devin Brown at quarterback. Is it Evan Pryor coming back from an ACL? There's so many names. I think Brandon Innes, it's kind of a crime against humanity that he cannot graduate early to be with his boy Carnell Tate. But I would love to get your feedback, your comments on that. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. If you guys are not members of BuckeyeScoop.com, I'm telling you, it is a blast. Some of the greatest people on earth are on there. It's really it's just a fun community. It's a fun place to shoot the crap, just kind of talk football, talk life. We have some really, really interesting discussions. Really high level people. Board of trustees members are on there. I mean, there's some really high level high-state people that belong to our site. People in the Woody Hayes belong to our site. So I appreciate you guys subscribing. So again, if you guys want the real deal, the real scoop on what is going on inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, BuckeyeScoop.com is your spot. So we appreciate you guys as always. If you guys are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star review. Those are huge. It helps people find the show, and it's a huge deal for us, and we really appreciate you guys, and it only takes about 30 seconds to do. So thank you guys so much. Again, great questions. You guys are, this is great. I think it's going to be McCord to start off just because I think that we, he's the guy that would have gone in if something happened to CJ, if CJ would have broke his shoelace and Kyle McCord would have came running in. So I think initially it's going to be Kyle McCord to start the season off, and we'll go from there. I mean, he's got Marvin. Obviously, Marvin was his high school teammate, so the chemistry there is already built in there. So, again, whoever plays quarterback with Ryan Day, I'm not nervous about it because we've had such incredible quarterback play since Dwayne Haskins in 2018. Even in 2017 with JT, it was Ryan's first year on the job. JT was fantastic. Won the Cotton Bowl, beat USC. Then with Dwayne, then obviously Justin Fields, CJ Stroud. Like, we've had the most incredible run of quarterback play. Really going back to Braxton. Really going back to Troy. I mean, you go Troy, Terrell, Braxton. I mean, it's just been an incredible run of quarterback, of high level quarterback play, of silver football winning quarterback play. The silver football is obviously the Big Ten MVP. So we appreciate you as always. Bring this to the board. I mean, God, I love these great questions. We need these on BuckeyeScoop.com. So appreciate you guys as always. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. You guys are the best. I hope you have a great Sunday with your families. And if you guys are on BuckeyeScoop.com, we're going to be on that board all day because there's some great NFL football ready to go. So we appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Go Bucks. It's time to get ready for winter conditioning.